Welcome to SwitchCorner, my name is Alex, and today, this one is sponsored Red Deer Games. They asked me to introduce you all to their new release, Syndrome, on the Nintendo Switch, and this may be Red Deer's most ambitious game to date yet as a publishing team. So with that luck, hit subscribe, join us here on SwitchCorner for reviews and deals near daily, and let's get started. First off, price-wise, it's one of the more expensive releases from Red Deer, but of course, they are kicking things off with a sizable 60% discount, and that runs through till April 1st. This may be their biggest game as well, just in general file size. It's coming in just under 6 gig. Opening Syndrome, then it sets the scene immediately. You wake up from cryosleep on a space station known as the Valkenburg. No other pods are opening around you though, and with a quick tap of a computer terminal found in front of you, you uncover you are the only one left alive from this selection of pods. It's definitely not a good start to your day, and things are only going to get worse. This is a station I would best describe as a graveyard. You kind of figure that out very quickly. The rest of the crew are very much dead though. They're also very much on display, typically hanging from ceilings, and if it does move, I'd suggest run and figure out who they are later. We will meet a few that still are, let's say, alive. The problem is they communicate via radio. Can we trust them? We need to kind of figure this out as we go. The game then, it's also fully voice acted when it comes to direct characters, which I really appreciate. You know, it is an indie, quality does range, but I think in these scenarios, I appreciate the effort and it definitely adds to that immersion for sure. Sci-fi horror fans though, this story, it's absolutely one for you. I'm not the best with horror, honestly. It's one of those games that tells you to walk down the corridor with flickering lights and a bit of, you know, decorative blood splatter, and I can't help but stop in my tracks and ask myself, why ever would I want to do that? Syndrome then is a first-person survival horror experience. It's a game all about exploration, a dash of combat though you're not particularly strong, and this is all in environments that I would call less than welcoming. It released over on Steam originally and now comes to the Switch from Red Deer Games. I've sunk maybe the opening few hours in at this point, and it all starts off kind of relatively, I'd say, relaxed, but there's always that air of unsettling. Think of that voice at the back of your brain saying, where is the thing that wants to kill me, why isn't it coming after me? And it leans on this feeling to great effect, kicking things off. Quickly then you'll be introduced, as I said in story, to a couple of characters. They are communicating with you via radio. They naturally both say you can't trust the other one, but you'll be following their guidance, at least initially from my experience, and then I guess you can figure out who to trust later into the game. The game's controls then are simple enough: movement, the ability to duck, you can sprint, though do be aware you have a stamina bar for your character, which you will need to manage. You can hide in the environment, interact, and eventually you'll get some weapons. Controls, the game kind of slowly teaches you in-game. There's no direct opening tutorial or even a menu to look at them. It's a learn as you go setup. Alongside this then as well, you also have a pop-up map as well as an inventory selection screen. This is where you can use things like health items, which will absolutely be essential. You know though, you'll make a little bit of progression here and it's exciting. You get your first weapon, it's of the good old melee variety, but later in the game you will find guns. Do not think this one turns into Doom though, you are severely overpowered by your enemies and it's always going to be a better option just to simply run. I learned this the hard way when I struck an enemy with my wrench of sorts and they barely reacted. Thankfully it's not of the horror variety when it's one-hit kills, but I still didn't last all that long. After a little jog around the space station, they caught up to me and yeah, there was my death. Die, and this one it's old school, then it's back to your last save point and you can't save from a menu. There's these physical locations you need to use, so I would say look for those frequently. The thing I learned in the opening moments with this game was, well, yes, as I said, there is a map. This space station is an absolute maze. It's always going to be important to understand where the elevator is to take you to another floor. You see, this game is built across different floors. That's what you'll be exploring through. That is, though, your ideal escape plan, and I started to embrace this concept following my first death. You know, I was always advancing forward, but I was very much keeping track of the turns I was taking. Sure, you can hide from these enemies as well, but they do recognise knives and they recognise doors opening as well. I wouldn't call it the best option. So far though, in my gameplay, I've had to shut all blast shields around the station. Seems that our location, not going to be ideal. I've lowered security to advance my progression, though at the same time, it seems I released some sort of monster, not a good move. I've seen bodies hanging from the ceiling or in pieces on the floor. I found a few of the key officers on the station. I even then got into the jail cells as I needed something off the individual that was locked up, who is now very much dead. It definitely has a decent pace of always giving you a new objective. It doesn't feel like they're too far in between moving on to what is the next step. Scares wise then, it's been a whole lot of like tones that kind of creep you out in the audio field. There's been a couple of jump scares, but then also more of a run away vibe as quickly as possible, which I definitely like. I can't handle a one jump scare after another. I'm just kind of not built that way. I've also started to notice a dash of psychological horror as well. It seems we may be slowly losing our sense of reality, which is not ideal given the scenario we already face. Outside of that though, I'm just really starting to uncover this plot, but it's very clear a lot of science fiction classics influence this one, and it's willing to reward you with more lore if you are willing to explore. That's because around this world you'll find terminals with all sorts of good data, email, staff numbers, even documents and communication. I was reading them to get just an idea of this world, but also to see if I could maybe give myself some sort of advantage to what happened potentially. It just gives you a nice window though into what life was like before this, as well as what life was as it was breaking out. That is Syndrome though. It's just released on the Nintendo Switch and I've faced off against now the opening moments. No doubt there's more twists and turns to come in its story. I'm sure there's a fair few reviews up on YouTube though to check out. And yeah, that'll give you an idea of that full experience. Remember then though, it does kick things off with that sizable 60% discount, and that's running through till April 1st with an in-store size of 6 gig. It's always good though to see more science fiction on the Nintendo Switch, though the horror element, that's not going to be honestly for everyone. The vibe I'm getting here though is think Event Horizon. For anyone that's seen that movie, there's bodies strung up from the ceiling, and that's what I would consider now a classic cinema scene, even if the film is, at least in my opinion, definitely underappreciated. Will you be checking out Syndrome though from Red Deer Games with its launch discount? Is science fiction horror even your thing? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks again then to Red Deer Games for sponsoring today's video, always appreciated. They are huge supporters of the channel, and with that, a shout out to the patrons of the channel who are going above and beyond to support SwitchCorner. Helps more than you know, so thank you all so much. Then hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do here. Join our growing family, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.